Happy Black Queer Pride. My name is Jamie Frazier and I serve as the Executive Director of Lighthouse Foundation. Lighthouse Foundation is a Black queer-led, multiracial social justice organization that advances justice for Black LGBTQ plus people across Chicagoland through empowerment, education, and entertainment. We invite non-Black accomplices, interfaith partners, and service providers to support community organizing that builds a more equitable LGBTQ plus community. It's my pleasure to segue Reverend Smash. She is our lead care organizer, and she's going to talk about a shift in our organizing strategy. She's going to talk a lot more about consensus organizing, what it is, how we do it, and the ways in which this strategy will impact the Black LGBTQ plus Equity Index, our signature 2021 Racial Justice Initiative. Smash, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am glad to see you, even though I'm not really seeing you. I'm glad that you are here and that you are seeing me, and I hope to see you one day soon. My name is Smash, and I organize with CARE in the Lighthouse Foundation. CARE stands for the Coalition of Accomplices for Racial Equity, and we organize non-Black folks to come alongside queer Black folks in solidarity for the work that we are doing at the Lighthouse Foundation. And today we are talking about organizing. We did a kind of organizing 101 training a while ago. Was that December, November? I don't really know where I am or when it is, but recently sometime we did a 101 training on organizing. So I hope you were able to check that out. If not, I believe it's posted on this here Facebook page. Maybe somebody can post it right now so you can have access to that. Because we're going to go a little more in depth today, and we're going to kind of pivot to look at our upcoming 2021 campaign and what that means for organizing. But first, I'm going to talk about white supremacy. Those of you that know me know that I wasn't going to get started with anything without talking about this. And what I really want to say before we get started is I want us to know that what happened at the US Capitol on Wednesday was not an aberration. Black and brown folks are not surprised that white men with guns were allowed to enter and disrupt the US Capitol, because racist white men with guns, they're in the DNA of our country. What we witnessed on Wednesday is a small glimpse of how our country was indeed formed and how it has operated, even if many of the ways have been less overt. When white nationalists attacked my community in 2017 in Charlottesville, Virginia, most white folks told us to just leave them alone and let them have their rally. They said, just, stay at home. They're fine. They're just here for attention. Let them do their thing. I actually had a white pastor. She told me verbatim, I am not afraid of the white supremacists. I am afraid of the violence that we as counter-protesters would do. She wasn't afraid of the neo-Nazis and the neo-Confederates. White supremacists did immense harm to my community, and yet most of the white folks there in Charlottesville just wanted to get back to normal, just wanted to get back to good old Charlottesville. But friends, white supremacy is our normal. Overt white nationalists might be causing some extra visible chaos as of late, but our systems of white supremacy gave birth to them and fed them and have allowed them space and time and resources. And honestly, y'all, we've given them little to no opposition. White supremacists are not just doing this for attention. They're enacting their dreams of a white ethno-state. So, If we're not supporting Black or Indigenous organizations or organizers, now is the time. We need to be, with our time and our resources and our skills and our money, our voices, our vulnerability. I'm really big on that, y'all. We have to be vulnerable in order to do this work. And y'all, I know we have been in some very challenging times, right? But Black and brown folks and Indigenous folks have for hundreds of years battled the pandemic of white supremacy and have survived the chaos of imperial brutality. I know times have been hard, except for really rich people. Y'all doing just fine. But times have been hard, but now is still the time. Life is chaotic. It always will be. But there are some things that we must commit to now, in whatever ways that we can. We must commit to abolition. We must commit to radically reorienting our institutions, except for police and prison, those gotta go. And if our institutions cannot handle that, then they need to go as well. And the leaders of them need to go too. And that is okay, y'all. One of the most courageous things that we can do sometimes is to say enough and let death come to what needs to die. We must commit to creating alternative forms of community and protection and care. Looking into mutual aid is a great place to start. We must confront white nationalism. What happened at the Capitol is who we are as a country. It is who we have always been. But no, it is not who we have to be. But in order to be somebody else, we have to tell the truth. We cannot sugarcoat it and pretend like we just all have to come together and get along. There will be no peace, no reconciliation, and no healing without first truth-telling, accountability, and justice. We must do that work first, and it's not going to feel good. It's hard, but we have to do that work first. This is what we are called to, and there is room for all of us and what we are capable of bringing. We need each other. If you don't know how to get started, ask, go out on a limb, get a little uncomfortable. Ask Lighthouse Foundation, send me a message, ask a friend, call Robin DiAngelo. That part was a joke, don't call Robin. But don't let fear stop you from trying. We're gonna mess up. We need to be brave, be vulnerable, and be together. We need all of us. We need to do this, y'all. We must combat white supremacy in all of the ways, all of the time. The time is now. Okay, we're gonna go on to the training, the workshop, the session, the presentation, whatever it is. But I want us to remember why it is that we're here and doing this work. We must combat white supremacy. So give me a second here, y'all. I'm going to share my screen with you all, and we are going to get rolling with Lighthouse Foundation Organizing 2021. Woo, 2021. Here we come. It's happening. We are on our way. And like I said, this is going to be a little bit more in depth, a little bit more focused than our last training. But if you want that, we can make that accessible, and you definitely can get that, and we can roll. So an outline. Again, this is one of my favorite little organizy fishy pictures. We organize so that we can become the big fish, and then we can eat the big fish that was trying to eat us. But our outline today, we are going to review a little bit about what community organizing actually is. Just a brief overview. We're going to talk about how we're going to do it in 2021 with our new platform, our new campaign of the Black LGBTQ plus Racial Equity Index. I think I got that right. It's a long name. We talked about other names, but that's what it is. So we have to call it that long name. But I hope y'all just learned all about that before. If not, go back and watch the session that just happened about our upcoming campaign this year. We're going to talk about a win-win project and what that means and how we hope that that's what we're going to be doing in 2021. We're going to talk about who gets to play. So what does it mean for all of us to be doing this work together? And then I'm going to ask and answer a few questions that I have heard from folks this week, and some just general questions that folks typically have. So let's go. So what is community organizing? Community organizing is about building power in communities or constituencies in order to enact social change, right? It's about people power, building power. It's about organizing and concentrating power. As I said in the last presentation, it's not about bestowing power upon people, right? It's about organizing the power that we already have, bringing it together, and making the changes in our society that will mutually benefit all of us. So that is what we are trying to do. That is what we are always trying to do at Lighthouse Foundation. It's what we've been doing, but it also will continue to be what we're doing, even as we kind of shift and pivot into a new project this year. And just as a review, there are different ways that we approach social change, right? Again, this is from the INE Institute. And they have these 3 different types of social change. There's personal transformation. So that's kind of like, you're like self-help, mentorship, meditation, 12-step programs, anything like that that's working on ourselves, which is important. And then we also have alternative institutions. So these are things that are created that are alternative to the institutions that kind of govern our society and make our society work, right? So some examples of that are like worker cooperatives, alternative education, mutual aid is like that as well. And then we have dominant institutional change. We are trying to shift, reorient, change the ways that our dominant institutions operate. And that is what we are doing. And I want to reiterate that all of these things are important. It's not that like one is better than the other. We need all of these things. And we kind of do these things at the Lighthouse Foundation. We're kind of creating alternative community for Black queer folks as well. And we also think that by building community together, by doing this together, by learning, by holding each other accountable, that we're also working on that personal transformation part. But our focus today and kind of what it is that we do at its base is changing dominant institutions. So let's do that. This is another slide from last time that we talked about, and we kind of talked about these different organizing steps in really general ways, but I want to talk about them today in a more direct way with what we're doing this upcoming year with our Black Queer Racial Equity Index. So the first step in organizing is to build community and relationship, right? We know that relationship is really important if we want to kind of coalesce that power. And Lighthouse Foundation folks have been doing this for years. Even though Lighthouse Foundation is fairly new officially, the folks within the Lighthouse Foundation have been doing this organizing, this building relationship, building community, bringing people together, building trust, building accountability, been doing this for years. And kind of the official way that we do this within the Lighthouse Foundation is through the Black Queer Caucus. And that caucus of Black queer folks kind of gets together, organizes, reaches out to the Black queer community, and really builds relationships there. And we also do that on the care side with non-Black accomplices and allies. We used to be the Coalition of Allies for Racial Equity, and then we realized that ally is kind of a soft word sometimes, so we changed that to accomplices. And we are doing that within care in terms of individuals and organizations. We are building community and relationship. That has already been ongoing, right? So within that, the Black Queer Caucus identifies problems and issues. And that is something that we've done in the past. You may remember this past year, we got a racist cop kicked out of North Halsted, which was like a huge win, right? The Black queer folks identified that as a problem in the North Halsted community. And then we organized and we made that happen. And now this year, we've identified, the Black Queer Caucus has identified a problem that institutions all institutions really, but particularly the focus this year, institutions that serve Black queer folks are predominantly white institutions. And by that, when we say white institutions, we mean in terms of representation, in terms of culture, in terms of support, in terms of analysis, right? These are white institutions. So that is the problem that has been identified, that there aren't enough Black queer folks in these institutions, kind of shaping the culture and figuring out the correct systems and structures and ways of being that will most equitably and most well serve Black queer clients. So that is the problem that has been identified. And from that problem, within that, we began to do research and plan. And this equity index is what kind of came out. That is the fruit of the beginning stages of planning. However, we're just getting started. So we have lots of researching and planning yet to do, and you get to be a part of that. That's pretty legit. And that is something that we will continue to do. We will research what are other ways that equity indexes have worked? Who else is doing this kind of work in Chicago? How are all of these different institutions operating? We're going to do lots of background research. We want to figure out best practice. We have lots of work to do. So we will do that in CARE. We will work with other folks, work with other organizations as well. I know we have kind of a grad class on board that will do some of the data and statistics for us. But we are kind of in that stage right now, in the research and plan stage. But I also want to mention that we always are constantly in the build community and relationship phase as well. It's not like we check that off, but that is a big part of what we'll be doing going forward as well. So within this plan for this equity index, after we kind of get enough data, we get enough information, we have a clear vision of what it's going to look like, we will take action. And for us, we are really hoping that the action that we are going to be taking is going to be collaborative. We are working really hard to create relationships with these 5 organizations in Chicago that serve Black queer folks. And we want to create an action plan that will kind of bring mutual support and thriving to everyone, right? We don't want this to be something where we just kind of heap a bunch of demands on these organizations, but we want to collaborate, we want to work together, we want to build community, and that is kind of the action that we are taking. So what will that look like, you may be wondering? As these 5 organizations agree to be in this accountable relationship with us, they will complete a survey that will allow us to look at how equitable they are in terms of having Black queer folks in their organization and the culture that they're creating. We'll give feedback, we'll give them suggestions, and then we actually give them a report card that will be public. So folks all throughout Chicagoland and all throughout everywhere will be able to look and see how these institutions are operating in terms of Black queer justice. So that is our action. We're working together, we're figuring out, we're spreading the word, it's complex, we're figuring this out now. And we want everyone to be on board. However, like I said, we hope for collaboration. And yet, if powerful institutions refuse accountability or stall the process for too long, we can further organize communities to take direct action in demanding accountability. And I do want to mention one other quick thing in taking action. I know when we think about organizing, we often think about action. And we're kind of re-envisioning what that means with this equity index. But if we do this well, if we figure out how to do collaboration and accountability with these institutions well, then we'll be able to work together and do further action out in the world, right? So let's say that we need to create or call for some type of legislation that supports Black trans women. And now that we've created these relationships and community with these institutions, we can work together, all 6 of us, hopefully to push action through for things we want, like legislation. So we really believe, even though you might not think of an equity index as like taking direct action, that this project, that this initiative that we are focusing on in 2021 will really allow us to continue to take action in the future. So that is our action step. And then we get to evaluate and celebrate. So during and after this first round of the Black LGBTQ Equity Index, we will evaluate. Hopefully we will celebrate the work that we've done if everything goes according to plan. And then we will get to work expanding the process, right? So that is the part of evaluation and celebration, is figuring out what went well, what we need to work on. And then we want to scale up. We will continue to work with the same institutions each year. It'll be a yearly report card, hopefully. But we also want to bring in other organizations and institutions that serve queer folks, that serve Black queer folks, and make sure that they are also doing the work that they say they are doing. So that is kind of the process. That is how we do organizing. That is how we are shaping organizing for this upcoming campaign. If you have any questions, I know every time we talk about this racial equity index, it's a lot of information. And I know I didn't really go into depth in it. I hope you watched the first section before this so you know kind of what I'm talking about. It's a lot of information. There's a lot going on. It's kind of like an information dump into your brain. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We are constantly figuring out what this means for us as well, but we're really excited about this organizing process and how this may help radically reorient our institutions towards Black queer justice. All right. So we are going to talk about a win-win project. There is a part of organizing, a type of organizing that is sometimes called consensus organizing. And it's kind of like we just went through a step-by-step process. Consensus organizing, if you look it up, you can see like the step-by-step process. And one thing that I really like in the consensus organizing world is this idea of a win-win project, right? And we think that this Black LGBTQ Equity Index is going to be a win-win project for everyone involved. And that means a couple of things. So first, it is what it sounds like, right? So you're like, everybody wins. That's kind of what we mean. We think that we as the Lighthouse Foundation, we think that the greater Black queer community and these 5 institutions that we are going to be partnering with and holding accountable, we think that if this goes well, if all parties are invested and collaborative, that this will be a huge win for all of us, that it will be mutually beneficial, right? That everybody wins. So that is kind of like the very basic meaning of win-win. But there is kind of like this particular, these particular identifiers for what a win-win project is. So in consensus organizing, a win-win project is typically something that you do in the beginning stages of organizing, as you're just kind of building those relationships, as you're bringing people together, as you're figuring out what your common interests are. You create a win-win project so that it is something that is quick, not necessarily easy, but something that is winnable, and something that you can do soon and right away, and something that people can celebrate and see, and see the effects of in their community. So we understand that this Black LGBTQ Equity Index, it is a long-term thing, right? Like we're trying to look at the long view here, and we hope it has long overarching value in our community. However, there is a part of it, like here in this beginning, that really is a win-win project. And that is buying in by everyone involved. If all of our partners that we're seeking out and hoping to work with, if these institutions that serve Black queer folks, if everybody buys in to collaboration, to accountability, then that is the win-win. Because that initial buy-in It's going to be unifying, right? It's winnable. We can do this. I'm pretty sure that we can get buy-in from everybody. We've already started having conversations with all of these organizations and institutions. We're having conversations with them because we respect them. They do good work, and we think that we can collaborate. We think this is winnable. So getting buy-in, it would be unifying, winnable. It'd be widely and deeply felt. So for all 6 of these organizations, kind of in the beginning, to say we're going to do this together, like that's going to be widely and deeply felt in our communities here in Chicago. It'll change the rules and the patterns. It's going to change how we work a little bit, right? So we're doing this collaboration thing. We're figuring out how to do it together. It's going to feel kind of uncomfortable, but we're going to make it happen. It's a short time frame. Like once we get buy-in, okay, then that is the win-win. So people can buy in. I don't want to say immediately because y'all know institutions are slow moving, but people can buy in, organizations can buy in pretty quickly without having to say this is exactly how it's going to look, right? We're all figuring this out together. But if we buy in, we're committing to the process. And also, it's going to illuminate the need for a plan, right? So we all buy in, we're going to do this, we're going to work on Black LGBTQ equity, we're going to take these recommendations, we're going to take the survey, but then we need a plan. So the initial buy-in, the initial win-win of everybody buying in, kind of diving into this, will create this need for a plan. And it's going to create opportunities for many people to play. And I really like this because it doesn't say opportunities for many people to participate. It says play, and I'm into that. Let's all get playing. But this win-win project that we're suggesting, that institutions that serve Black queer folks agree to buy into this project with us, is going to create opportunities for lots of folks to contribute. It's going to create opportunities for all of the employees and all of the organizations, all of the clients. It's going to create opportunities for the community at large. So we really think that this is, in fact, a win-win project. So, opportunities for many people to play. Let's talk a little bit more about what that means. So here you see, we broke this down into 3 different groups. So we have the Black Queer Caucus of the Lighthouse Foundation, the group that is kind of identifying the problem that we see. We have CARE, the Coalition of Accomplices for Racial Equity. And then we have our targets. And I think when we say the word target, people get a little nervous, right? When we're talking about organizing and targets, we often think, well, these are people that we're just going to do some direct action to, and we're going to take them down and make them feel uncomfortable and attack. That's not necessarily what target means. Sure, sometimes, yeah, there are some institutions and groups and others that need to be attacked. Not physically, nonviolent direct action. But targets just kind of signifies that these are the groups or the institutions that we are targeting with our action or our plan. And in this case, our plan and our action involves a lot of cooperation and collaboration and community building. So these are all of the different opportunities for people to play. And we're really looking at common strength and common interest, which is really kind of exciting. I want to talk specifically for a few moments about CARE because that is where I am in the world. And I think that is a place where folks have some questions. So what does it mean for CARE to be involved in this? What does it mean for non-Black accomplices to come alongside this work of Lighthouse Foundation in the ways that we are building collaboration with these institutions? And I want to say that the most important thing is just continuing to build relationship. I think what I hear a lot of and what I feel myself, and I think we feel this way a lot, is that we want to be doing something, right? We see the ways that inequality and inequity and toxicity and harm are affecting our friends, are affecting the Black queer community, and we want to do something desperately, and we don't really know what to do. And there are lots of things we can do, but I want to stress again, one of the best things we can do is to create relationship and community. And that happens by showing up to meetings, showing up to social events. And I know that's been difficult this past year for a lot of reasons. I'm pretty sure I have carpal tunnel from doom scrolling. Like I literally couldn't sleep last night because my hand was throbbing and I was like, it's 2021 and I got carpal tunnel from doom scrolling. I don't know what that has to do with about building relationship. All that to say, it's been hard. But that is really where we need to focus this year, I think, as CARE, as Lighthouse Foundation, and just as the world, as we figure out how to combat white supremacy and how to bring about the equity and the justice that we want. It's really important, just the building relationship. So we care, folks. We're going to continue to build relationship together. We're going to build relationship with the Black Queer Caucus. We're going to build relationship with the targets. The Black Queer Caucus will work with the targets. The targets will work with the Black Queer Caucus. And we'll all kind of be interwoven in this web of work and of play and of figuring out how to do this together. And you might be thinking right now, like, well, Smash, you just said a lot, but I still don't know what you're talking about. And what I really want you to take away is that building relationship is the most important thing we can be doing right now. It's building trust, building accountability, and from that, we figure out then what those next action steps are. And sure, donate your money, donate your time, donate your voice, amplify the voices of Black queer folks, but keep showing up to build relationship in whatever way that may seem best right now, even if it's online. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, toes crossed, we can start to build relationship and community in person sometime this year. I almost don't want to say it out loud, but I just did. I think that will be really positive for us and help us figure out how to play together in this work for equity. So I want to now address some questions. So I reached out to folks and saw if anybody kind of had any questions about what it is that we are doing this year, or what organizing actually looks like, or like kind of this whole idea of win-win. And here are a few questions I got. So one says, are there red flags to look out for in existing organizations that might indicate an unhealthy environment or a team that's ill-equipped for meaningful change? That is a wonderful question. And the answer to that is yes. I think for me, when I am working with an organization or a group of people, the first thing I always notice is defensiveness versus openness. And defensive-ness is a characteristic of white supremacy culture, and it's what a lot of us are taught to do when we are challenged. We think that any sort of challenge is a personal attack on us and who we are, and yet defensiveness is not helpful, right? As we're looking towards transformation and change. So I think when I'm interacting with a group or an organization or an institution, and all I'm getting from them or all I'm getting from the people in power is a lot of defensiveness, I know that it's going to be a really uphill battle. And not to say that it's impossible. However, if the people in power somewhere cannot move away from defensiveness, it's going to be really hard. And it may be more helpful to use our time elsewhere. And I know that that sounds kind of harsh, but not everyone is teachable. Not everyone is amenable to change. And sometimes we just need to focus where we can. And that is also, I think, good advice for all of us, that as we are in particularly positions of power, wherever we are in the world, to check our defensiveness, right? To make sure that we are entering into conversations that are difficult and challenging with an openness a willingness to listen, a willingness to be challenged. And I think that will be really helpful for us. So another question is, if your goal is to be accountable to queer, disabled, Black, and Indigenous people of color, but the demographics of your circles or of the organization you're joining don't reflect those marginalizations, how can you stay connected to the needs of queer, disabled, BIPOC without asking too much of their time and resources? I think this is a great question. I think this kind of names where a lot of white folks are at, right? Like, we want to get involved. We don't really know exactly where to. We don't want to mess up or make a mistake or say the wrong thing or piss off people of color. So this is a great question. And I think the answer to that is what we're doing here at Lighthouse Foundation, right? So there are organizations, Lighthouse Foundation is one of them, that are working to get white folks connected and to work on accountability. And I think this goes back, and this also goes to the next question of what can I do? I think when we sometimes enter into organizations or spaces as white folks, like with the Lighthouse Foundation, we want to feel, or maybe I'll just say me, this is about SMASH. We want to feel useful. I want to feel useful. I want to feel like I'm contributing, I'm doing something. And if it doesn't feel like that right away, sometimes we are skeptical, we are uncomfortable, we're not sure what we're doing. And I encourage us to lean in to that, right? Especially this last year with Lighthouse Foundation, as we kind of pivoted and tried to figure out how to do what we're doing in terms of pandemic life. I think, we weren't in the beginning, especially kind of doing as much as we were before that, just months before that. So it kind of maybe felt like people, or at least I'll just own it again, like, what are we doing? Where are we going? And I just encourage us to lean into that, to continue again, to show up, to build those relationships. Because even as we work on this Black LGBTQ equity index, like, that is going to be our focus. But that's not going to be the only thing we do forever and ever. Amen. There are going to be other ways we need to get to work. There are going to be other needs that we have to address as an organization, and really building those relationships, I think, will be the foundation that we need to do that work. So I don't know if that completely answered the question, but I think there are organizations and communities out there where we can invest if some of our other spaces are not accountable. And then I think what we can do is take what we learned in spaces like the Lighthouse Foundation and hopefully apply them to our other circles and our other communities that aren't equitable. And I think the point of being in community is that we will have each other's back, right? So if you then go back to your workplace and start demanding that there be some sort of racial equity, hopefully the rest of us at the Lighthouse Foundation will have your back in that, and we can do that together. So as you've noticed today, I'm talking about community a lot. And this is just a quick sidebar to people of faith. I know we have a lot of congregations who are member congregations of the Lighthouse Foundation. For me, this is all about beloved community, right? Like, I'm a reverend, and for me as a person of faith, like, this is why I think this is so awesome. This like mutually beneficial win-win community building. I'm like, this is beloved community, and for me, like, this is the vision and the hope and the dream of God. And I'm not going to go into a sermon. I kind of did that in the beginning already, but just for all of the congregations out there that support us. For me, that is a good reminder of why this work is so important and why we are approaching work this way, and not necessarily, we're not reacting combatively. We want to go forward being proactive and collaborative. And if we have to, we will escalate our tactics. But what we are doing, I truly believe, is a vision of beloved community. Okay, I'm going away from that now. So a big question, and we always get this question, I always get this question, whether it's from folks in care, it's whether it's other organizations that I'm doing anti-racism training with, there's just this constant question. This is predominantly from white folks. What can I do, right? There's just this unknowing of like where to start or where to get invested. And that is because white folks, most of us move in only or predominantly white spaces. So we're kind of clueless a lot of the time. And this is a presentation of the Lighthouse Foundation. So what you can do is join with the Lighthouse Foundation. But if you're somewhere else in the world, you can join with our online stuff right now. Excuse me, or you can find somewhere in your own vicinity, in your own geographical area. There are organizations doing this work everywhere, not like exactly like the Lighthouse Foundation, and honestly, probably not as great as the Lighthouse Foundation, but there are people doing this work everywhere. And it is your job to find them. And then I think once we do find them, we're like, can I just show up? What do I say? What do I do? Are they going to like me? And I can't answer all of those questions, but the answer is, yeah, you should just show up. And it might feel uncomfortable. It might feel weird. The beloved community and the revolution and all the things we want, they're going to feel like that. And that's okay. And that's good. But showing up and asking questions, I think the last question was great about like, we don't want to ask BIPOC for too much other time or resources. But if there is like an organization doing work, right, you can say, hey, I would like to help. How can I help? And that is an okay thing to say and to ask. So specifically though, for Lighthouse Foundation, whether you're an individual or whether you are an organization, a faith community, again, just keep showing up, keep attending care meetings. We just had a social event. We want to have more social events. That is really important. We cannot do this work that is hard work, that is trying work, that is important work without really getting to know each other and without building that trust and accountability. So keep, please, showing up. And then maybe take it upon yourself to say like, hey, I'm going to reach out to this other person within CARE, this other person within Lighthouse Foundation, and see if they just want to hang out, right? Like that is the way that we build the power that we are trying to build for social change. We also want to remind folks that we have these particular kind of like committees or teams within CARE. And one is communications. So that will be if you're really into like being on social media, of spreading the word. Once we really get into this LGBTQ Black Equity Index, we're going to need to get the attention of lots of folks, right? We're going to want to spread the word. We want to grow this. We want a lot of people to be invested, to know what's going on. So we need people to figure out what that means in their own circles. And to essentially spread this good news. I'm not trying to be religious again, but that's what it is, right? It's about spreading what we're doing and about grabbing the attention of folks so that this work of justice can be done. We also have a research team. That research team is going to be really important, as I talked about earlier, of kind of figuring out what type of equity indexes are happening other places? What type of questions can we ask? What are best practices once we have recommendations? Doing research about these institutions themselves. So there's a lot of work to be done there. If you're into like looking things up on the Google machine, or if you're into like data or like Excel, bless you. And also we need you. We need you on this project and in this work. And then we also have an action team. And again, I know that moving into this this project, this equity index, it doesn't necessarily feel like direct action, right? Which is what some of us sign up for. I'll raise my hand for that. I'm into direct action. But there is opportunity for that. There is opportunity for action. It may look different. But as an action team, we will be working on engagement. We will be working on implementation. And again, we will be working together, hopefully, with the organizations that we're working with, the institutions, to work collaboratively for some further action down the road. Because I think we all know that we got a lot of work to do throughout the city in terms of Black queer justice. So I want to lift up all of those things as ways that you can get involved. Obviously, we want you on board at the Lighthouse Foundation. We also really want to work on continuing to like educate people on what is organizing and what is leadership development and how can we all get involved. So no matter what it is that you bring, what it is that you want to know, I want to again say that like we need all of us, right? So come on along and ask lots of questions, and we definitely will figure this out together. And I also, look, I'm just going to talk about relationships some more because that's really important. I mentioned how relationships are important in terms of the work we're doing with their equity index, but they're not just important for that, right? Again, as we build relationships, as we work on community, as we work on trust, as we work on accountability, we better set ourselves up to respond to needs of the community. And just this week, our Black Queer Caucus program director, the wonderful Morgan, in a meeting, she was reminding us that Black trans women continue to be murdered at staggering rates, right? And she kind of tuned us into the fact that Chicago newspapers continue to misgender and dead name trans folks after they've just been murdered, which is like horrific, right? It is horrific. And it's unacceptable that we're still in this place where newspapers cannot get that right. So I know that, you know, Morgan's been reaching out to newspapers herself and like trying to contact them. But that is something that if we have solid relationships built, if we have connection and community, that, you know, Morgan can call me up and be like, hey, Smash, I need you to help dispatch 100 people to call the Chicago Sun-Times and tell them to stop dead naming trans folks. And we can do that, and we can do it quickly, and we can do it rapidly. We want to have the ability to do this sort of rapid response work if needed, on top of, you know, the equity index, which is going to take a lot of work. But if we're in community, then we can be able to kind of shift and move and respond and react as we need to. And we do that by building trust. So I know I'm just going to keep talking about that. I know it's been really hard to create community, to be in community and to feel community within this past year. I've only been in Chicago for about a year and a half. And I really felt like I was starting to hit my stride in terms of building community here. And then the pandemic happened, and it's been really hard. It's been hard to feel like there's kind of been a wall put up for that. And I think we're going to get back into that groove. We're going to figure out how to be together. We're going to stop doom scrolling and getting carpal tunnel. And I really, again, want that to be our focus this year. And if you're not here in Chicago, if you're not really a part of Lighthouse Foundation, you should be, but also find your people wherever you are and work to build and create community. We have to create the world we want to see, and we only can do that in relationship with one another. That is the very basic foundation of community organizing, is organizing the community, is organizing power, is organizing relationship, and figuring out how to be with one another. Even though it's messy and it's scary and it's uncomfortable, we have to figure out how to do that. And I think we're doing that. And excuse me. And I thank you all for the work you're doing. And yeah, just continue to be patient as we move through this time of pandemic. We will get to be together soon. And let's really just care for one another. And please reach out if you have any questions. Go to lightfoundchi.org. There's lots of information on there about Lighthouse Foundation. My email address is right there, revsmash@lightfoundchi.org. And you also can see where to donate. Obviously, that is important. As we try to scale up the work that we're doing at Lighthouse Foundation, we need money. We need to be able to pay Black queer folks for the work that they're doing. That's very important. So PHIMC is our fiscal sponsor. So you will go to their website, but make sure you please select Lighthouse Foundation in the drop-down menu there. So thank you all so much for tuning in. And we really look forward to doing this work together. And if there's more information that you want, if there's something you want to kind of do more of in the future, please reach out. And we love you. We appreciate you. We're glad you're on board. And we are going to combat white supremacy and cis heteropatriarchy together. And we're going to tear it all down. So thanks. Let's go. You're the best. We love you. And be well.